The wind carried dust like old sorrow, scouring the sun-bleached boards of Dry Creek's central square. A wooden platform had been thrown up against a livery stable wall, rough and splintering, as if the town hadn't bothered sanding decency into it. Flies buzzed around a nearby trough, where even the horses refused to drink. They knew the kind of day it was. Elle stood barefoot on that platform with wrists bound in rope, ankles red from shackles that had been removed just minutes before. Her eyes were dry, but her throat burned. She wore the same threadbare calico dress she'd arrived in. Too tight at the collar, too loose at the hips, like it didn't know how to fit a woman discarded by the world. The preacher's daughter, the banker's widow, the barren bride. Folks down there didn't whisper her name. They spat it. Got one more, called the auctioneer, voice thick as river silt. Quiet. No kin. Ain't likely to give you trouble. Doc says she's hollow where it counts, so no need worrying about extra mouths. Laughter cut through the heat like knives. One man elbowed another, chewing tobacco sloshing down his stubble. How much for a bed warmer who won't swell? Elle stared straight ahead, past the faces, past the sun, into some place inside her no one had touched in years. She wouldn't cry, wouldn't beg. She wasn't here by choice, but by consequence. Her husband's death, her in-laws' cruelty, a town too bored not to ruin someone. Infertile, they said. Useless. Better off gone. The bidding started low, $2 silver, then 5, then silence. Boots scraped against the dirt. A cough. Someone snorted, spat. She closed her eyes. Then the crowd shifted. A man stepped forward from the shade near the stables. He wore no hat. Long black hair, threaded with silver, hung loose against his shoulders. His face was carved by wind and memory, darker than the others, sharper too. He moved like something drawn by blood more than curiosity. Elle opened her eyes when the murmur rose. He didn't speak, just raised one hand. The auctioneer paused. You bid in, Red Oak? Still no words. Only the slow reach into his satchel, the sound of coins clinking against each other, heavy and old. He laid them on the platform edge. Gold pesos, dull by age but unmistakable. A hush fell, someone muttered. Damn Comanche's got Mexican gold? Another bidder. He'll just bury her with the rest. The auctioneer scratched his neck, cleared his throat, and nodded. Sold. Elle felt the rope cut loose from her wrists. She stumbled a little, but didn't fall. The man, Red Oak, they said, had already turned. He didn't offer a hand, nor a word. Just walked toward a lean bay horse tied beneath the dry limbs of a dying cottonwood. She followed because there was nowhere else to go. His saddle was worn but oiled, bedroll tied tight. A second horse stood nearby, bareback, meant for her. She didn't hesitate. She swung up like she'd done it before, though it had been years. Her thighs trembled against the saddler's hide, but she stayed upright. He gave a soft whistle. The horses moved. They rode east, away from the town, away from the stench of beer and sweat and judgment. No one called after her. No one waved. She'd never belonged there. The land spread flat and wide, brittle under the hoof. Mesquite trees scratched at the sky. Distant mountains lay like sleeping beasts on the horizon, wrapped in heat shimmer. The sun hung low behind them now, casting both their shadows long over the prairie. Every now and then he looked back, not at her, but at the space she occupied. After some miles, he spoke. Can you ride? His voice was deep, rasped like creek gravel, but not unkind. I'm still here, she said. He nodded, said nothing more for a long while. When dusk slid down the sky in copper ribbons, they reached a bluff overlooking a narrow canyon. Below lay a ranch house, small and wind-worn. Smoke curled from the chimney. Chickens wandered between fence posts. She saw movement, small figures, 5 in all, darting across the yard like shadows. Yours, she asked quietly. He nodded. My children. She felt the words like a stone in her stomach. A man with 5 children had no need for a barren wife. No need for a woman who couldn't add to his line. So what was she here for? Labor? Loneliness? He dismounted. She followed, legs stiff. The children watched from the porch. None ran to greet them. One boy, older than the rest, stood with arms crossed. A girl leaned on the post beside him. The smallest one, no more than 6, held a wooden horse carved from bone. They said nothing. Neither did she. Inside, the house was dark, cool. The walls smelled of cedar smoke and worn leather. A loom stood in one corner. A Comanche blanket hung on another. Her heart hammered from the silence. "You'll sleep here," he said, pointing to a corner cot. "Kitchen's yours. My eldest, Kita, he runs the stock with me. Others do what they can." She looked at him. "What do you expect me to do?" He looked back, long and unreadable. Not lie to them. That night, she sat at the edge of her cot, listening to the murmur of children beyond the door. Someone laughed softly. A lullaby hummed, off-key, almost a memory. Elle lay back, staring at the ceiling. The wood above her creaked with the weight of wind. The stars outside burned steady and cold. She wasn't wanted, but she wasn't pitied either. And somehow, that was hard to understand. In the morning, she'd rise, and she'd see if this land, this house, this man who spoke more with silence and sermons, would leave her alone, or give her a reason to stay. Morning broke slow, the kind of light that didn't so much shine as seep through warped window panes, across the dust-veiled floorboards, into the hollow ache behind Elle's eyes. She hadn't slept, not really, just drifted in and out of memory, held down by silence thicker than blankets. In the dark, the house felt alive, cracking, breathing, remembering things no one dared say aloud. She rose when she heard boots scuffing the floor outside her door. No one knocked, no greetings, just motion. The kitchen was little more than a hearth, a rusted stove, and a battered table with legs that leaned like tired men. She found flour, half a sack, and lard in a clay jar. No sugar, no salt. She worked quiet, hands remembering more than she did, mixing, patting, dropping spoonfuls of dough into a pan. The scent of frying bread crept through the house, cautious as a prayer. One by one, the children entered. The youngest came first, barefoot, hair sticking out in every direction, a tiny carved horse clutched in one hand. He stared up at her like she was a ghost and asked, "Are you going to stay?" Before she could answer, the others followed. 2 boys, twins, perhaps, elbows sharp, eyes bright with trouble. A girl around 13, narrow-eyed and silent, face unreadable beneath a waterfall of black hair. Last came the eldest, tall, lean, the shape of his father in rougher edges. "Kita," she remembered. He didn't sit, just stood with his arms crossed, jaw locked tight. They ate in silence, save for the scraping of tin utensils. The youngest, Nokos, leaned against her leg under the table. The twins whispered things behind their hands and snickered. The girl, Loma, never looked up once. Elle stole glances, catching pieces of them in the firelight. None of them smiled. Tama entered last, brushing dust from his coat. His presence quieted even the twins. He sat, nodded once at Elle. She gave him a plate without a word. They all waited. He bowed his head. Blessings for what we have, and for what holds. That was it. No amen. No holy names. Just a land's silence in his voice. After breakfast, the rhythm of the house unfolded like something practiced too long to be questioned. Kita and Tama went to corral, checking hooves and gates. The twins vanished outside, hollering at birds. Loma collected water with a metal pail and never once asked for help. Nokos followed Elle like a shadow, clutching the hem of her dress like he feared she'd float away. Elle scrubbed the pans and the floor. She didn't know why, maybe because she could, maybe because she needed to touch something she could fix. By noon, she found the garden, or what was left of it. A square of dying stalks, brittle squash vines, beans that had given up the fight. The earth cracked like old hands. She knelt, dug her fingers in. No moisture, not even low. The wind carried dust through her hair, and when she looked up, Tama was there, watching. "You're not the first to try," he said, voice low. She stood, brushing her palms. "Doesn't mean I won't." He looked past her, toward the hills. "It don't rain here like it used to." "Nothing does," she replied. They stood in the dry, quiet a moment longer, before he walked off without another word. That was his way. Leave thoughts unfinished, questions dangling like branches over a cliff. She spent the rest of the day sewing a torn sleeve, mending a broom, boiling water to scrub the twins' muddy rags. When dusk came, the children gathered on the porch, the sky behind them painted in colors too fierce to be soft. Copper, rust, flame. Nokos climbed into her lap. You're nicer than the last one. Her throat tightened. Last what? He shrugged, playing with the buttons on her bodice. Papa didn't bring her home. Just fed her. Then she cried too much and left. Elle wrapped her arms around him gently. I don't cry. He leaned his head against her chest. I know. Kita stood nearby, sharpening a knife with deliberate slowness. He said nothing, but when she met his eyes, she saw it. The storm behind them. Distrust. Maybe even hate. But it was rooted in fear, not malice. You think I'm here to replace your mama, she said aloud, softly. He paused the blade. You're not. No, she agreed. I'm not. That night, while the others slept, Elle sat alone at the kitchen table, lantern flickering against the walls. Tama entered, poured himself water, drank in silence. She ain't been gone long, has she? Elle asked, voice almost too quiet. He didn't look at her. Long enough for the ground to forget her smell. That's not the same as forgetting her. No! He turned then, and his eyes were not cruel, only tired. You think I brought you here to fill something. You'd be wrong. I was sold for nothing, Tama. Most men don't buy things they don't want. He stared at her. You weren't bought. You were taken from fire. She said nothing. The room pulsed with something thick and unspoken. Then, softer, he added, Don't lie to them. That's all I ask. I won't, she said and meant it. In the room beyond, Nokos cried out in his sleep. A nightmare. Elle rose instinctively, but Tama held out a hand. Let him come to you. Moments later, small footsteps padded down the hall. The boy stood in the doorway, eyes wide, breath ragged. Bad dream? Elle asked. He nodded. She opened her arms. He rushed in. Tama watched him a long moment, then turned and disappeared into the dark. The child curled against her like he belonged there. And for the first time since the platform, since the crowd, since the rope, Elle closed her eyes. Not because she was tired, but because she finally could. A week passed, then another, and still the rain refused them. The sun climbed meaner each morning, curling leaves to husks, drawing water from skin and soil alike. Even the hens stopped clucking, as if sound itself had dried up. Elle kept to her work, tending what scraps of garden she could save, mending shirts, brushing knots from tangled hair that wasn't hers. She moved through the house like a ghost becoming flesh again, slowly, deliberately. Yet the quiet had changed. Kita no longer avoided her. He didn't speak much, but he let her patch his sleeves and didn't flinch when she placed a hand on his shoulder in passing. Loma started leaving wildflowers on the kitchen windowsill, never looking to see if Elle noticed. The twins listened when she scolded. Nokos, of course, clung tighter each day. Tama remained mostly silent, but his gaze grew longer, lingering on her when he thought she wasn't looking. At night, they sometimes shared the front steps after the children had gone to sleep. She'd hum old hymns beneath her breath, and he'd sit like a stone, weather-worn, unmoving but not unlistening. It might have stayed that way, a slow thaw between wounded hearts, if not for the man who rode in from Fort Tannen. He arrived mid-morning, a rider in a duster slick with trail dust, boots polished like vanity, spurs chiming with false kindness. Elle watched from the doorway as Tama met him in the yard. The man's horse snorted and pawed, restless. Name's Hargrove, the rider said, tipping his hat. Looking to make a deal. Tama said nothing. Hargrove grinned, showing teeth too white for frontier honesty. Word is, this stretch of land will soon be railroad property. Government wants to draw clean lines. You're sitting on a piece they can't map. Tama's arm stayed folded across his chest. They mapped it with blood a long time ago. The grin faded a little. You can sell now, or wait for soldiers to fence you in. Either way, it won't be yours for long. Elle stepped off the porch. Hargrove gave her a glance that slid too low, lingered too long. "You the white girl he picked up at auction?" She didn't answer. She didn't need to. The man laughed and spat. Didn't figure him for sentimental. Tama's hand moved then. Fast, not for a weapon, but for the reins of Hargrove's horse. He yanked hard, causing the beast's rear and the rider to clutch for balance. "You said what you came to say." Thomas said, calm as thunder right before the break. "Now go." Hargrove wheeled his horse around, sneered. "Don't say I didn't offer you silver before the fire." When he left, the air felt changed. Not just thick, but loaded. That night, Elle found Tom alone by the barn, his hands resting on the rail, staring into the stars like they might argue back. "He'll come again," she said. "I know. You fought for men like him once," she added, not as accusation, but truth. "I scouted for the Union," he said. "That's not the same as fighting for them." "You killed for them." He nodded, "and they thanked me with a wooden medal and land they'd already stolen. Same medal they gave when they burned your people's churches." She stepped beside him, close enough to smell the smoke clinging to his shirt. "Why'd you buy me, Tama?" He didn't answer at first. The wind blew hard, then stopped like it too waited. "I didn't need a womb," he said finally. "I needed someone who wouldn't run." "Then you picked wrong," she whispered. "I was already running. Just didn't know from what." In the morning, a letter arrived by horseback courier, addressed to her. She didn't open it. She knew the handwriting. Her father's, tight, slanted, sharp as his sermons. He was dying, likely begging forgiveness now that time was short and heaven was close. She burned the envelope in the stove and watched the ash scatter. By afternoon, trouble returned, not in boots or bullets, but fangs. A scream from the house sent her running. One of the twins, Jonas, had reached into a woodpile and pulled out a coiled rattlesnake. It struck him fast, fangs sinking deep into his forearm before Elle got there. She didn't scream. She didn't panic. She yanked the child away, pressed her lips to his skin, and drew poison with every ounce of breath she had. Tama brought whiskey and a knife. She cut clean, wrapped. Jonas cried until he fell asleep from the fever. Later, as she washed the blood from her hands, Loma approached, wordless. The girl offered her a strip of horsehair, braided in a pattern Elle didn't recognize. "What's this?" Elle asked. "A bond," the girl said. "So we remember who stood when others fell." That night, the house changed. Quiet still reigned, but it was no longer cold. It was shared. Worn, yes, and silent, but like the hush after a prayer, not the silence before a blow. Kita found her on the porch, sharpening the blade Tama had left behind. "You ever shot a rifle?" he asked. "I know how," she replied. "Don't know if I will." He stared ahead. Pa says they'll come at night, when the ground's soft. She nodded. "Then we won't sleep easy." "I still don't like you," he added. "I don't need you to," she said. "Just need you to survive." He paused. "That's the first thing you said that sounds like Ma." In the dark, with the wind stirring dry leaves across the porch, Elle thought a name she no longer carried. The home that sold her like a mule, and the man who bought her with coin no one dare question. And she knew now, the land might be dying, the law might be coming, but she wasn't leaving. Not this time. Night dropped like a blade. The air hung heavy with storm promise, but it wasn't rain that came. It was the crack of a twig outside the barn, too careful to be an animal. It was a flicker of orange on a far ridge, not from lantern or campfire, but from men lighting oil-soaked torches. Elle saw it first from the kitchen window, where she'd been rinsing stitches from a torn apron. Her breath caught. The world outside had gone still, too still. No cricket song, no rustling feathers from coop. Just that slow burn approaching from the east like a line of fire ants on the march. She turned, found Tama already strapping on his belt, the knife he never wore indoors now at his side. "They're here," she said, but it wasn't a question. He didn't answer, just gave her the rifle from over the hearth. She took it. Kita burst through the door, cheeks flushed. "They've got 4, maybe 5, 2 with guns, 1 on a horse." Loma stood behind him, face white but steady. She held a long wooden staff, carved down from a branch Elle had seen her whittle for days. Not a child's toy now, something more. Elle knelt and took Noko's face in her hands. Stay with Loma. You understand? Stay hidden. He nodded, lip trembling. You'll come back. I always come back. The barn was the first to go. One of the torches flew in a wide arc, hit the dry straw roof, and exploded into bloom. Fire lit up the night like war drums. The horses screamed. The chickens scattered. The twins darted through smoke, grabbing buckets, trying to douse what they could. Tama moved like stone struck into motion, calm, precise, deadly. He flanked left into shadow, his bow drawn tight. Elle went high, climbed to the loft, tucked between rafters with the rifle braced across a beam. Her breath slowed. Her body didn't tremble. Not this time. The first man came through the gate with a shotgun and a curse. She squeezed the trigger. The crack split the silence and dropped him like a sack of wheat. A second ducked behind the fence, firing wildly. A bullet punched through the porch rail, where Loma had just stood. Kita returned fire, missing but scattering them back toward the tree line. Tama stepped from behind a shed and released an arrow. It found flesh. The man wailed and staggered. Elle climbed down, boots hitting dirt. The barn was lost, its roof a hissing skeleton. Smoke curled across the yard, making shapes out of memory, men from other fires, other towns, other sins. She ran toward the back pasture where she saw movement. A fourth man dragging one of the twins by the collar, using the boy as a shield. Elle raised a rifle. Drop him, she shouted. The man turned, sneering. I'll trade the brat for the woman. How's that sound? She fired. The shot took him in the throat. He crumpled with a noise like boiling oil, the boy scrambling free. Behind her, a voice barked, rough, commanding. Hargrove. He stepped from behind the shed, revolver in hand, aimed at Tama, who stood weaponless now, arrows gone. You should have sold when you had the chance, he snarled. You think you're some kind of noble savage? You're just a squatter in a world that's moving on. Elle raised the rifle again, but Hargrove swung his pistol toward her. Don't, he warned. Tama didn't flinch. He stepped forward, hands empty, voice calm. You don't belong here. None of you ever did. Hargrove spat. Tama's voice dropped to a whisper. We were here before names, before fences, before maps. You gonna pray me to death? No, Tama said. She will. Hargrove turned just as Elle pulled the trigger. Click. Empty. He grinned, raised his revolver. But the shot didn't come from her. It came from behind. Kita stood in the smoke, his hands shaking, Tama's old pistol gripped white-knuckled in his grasp. The bullet had torn through Hargrove's side, not fatal but clean. The man collapsed with a grunt, weapon falling from his hand. Kita stared, horror dawning in his eyes. I didn't mean... Tama rushed forward, pulled him close. You did what you had to. No, The boy wept, shoulders shaking. I didn't want to... You protected your blood, Tama whispered. That makes you a man. Elle stood over Hargrove, watching the life drain from his certainty. He clutched his side, coughing. You'll never keep this land, he rasped. We already did, she said, and walked away. By dawn, the fires had burned out. The barn was ash. One chicken still pecked at the dirt like nothing had happened. Loma sat beside the well, with Nokos curled against her. The twins dragged what water they could. The land smelled of smoke, blood, and something else, like a chapter ending. They buried 2 men behind the corral, unmarked graves. Tama insisted. Even snakes returned to the earth. That evening, the family sat around what was left of the porch. No one spoke for a long time. Then Nokos climbed onto Elle's lap. Ma, he said, soft. She looked down at him. He smiled, gap-toothed and tired. You're our ma now, right? She looked at Tama. He nodded once. The other children turned slowly. Kita gave her a look not of surrender, but of acceptance. Loma reached for her hand. One by one, they leaned in. Elle pulled Nokos closer and exhaled the weight of everything she'd been told she wasn't. infertile, unwanted, unworthy. Not anymore. The wind picked up again, whispering through scorched wood and empty sky. She could hear it now, not judgment, not silence, but belonging.